Welcome to the Revere Veterans Community Show. Today we have a real special veteran of the community of Revere. Her name is Carol Ty. She was a 7-year superintendent at the Revere High School. And let me welcome you, Carol, first of all.
Thank you, Morris.
Carol, I'm going to start off with, well, when did you first start teaching?
Okay. I started teaching at Revere High School in 1960, in September of 1960. And I remember I was just finishing up writing my thesis at Boston College. And I thought, well, I'll finish my thesis, I'll teach this year and I'll finish my thesis, and then I'll think about going on further to graduate school, maybe to get a doctorate or maybe to do other things. I'm not sure I want to teach, but I'll tell you, I was there for, I think, maybe only a week. Well, the first week it was pretty hectic, but I was there for a very short period of time when I just knew this was where I was going to spend my life. I was so exhilarated with what a teacher does, what a difference teachers can make in children's lives. I loved the atmosphere at Revere High School. I admired all the people who were there, and I ended up staying at Revere High School until 1994 when I went to the superintendent's office. I never expected to be there because, of course, when I started, there were no women superintendents anywhere. I never even thought about it, and so it's kind of ironic that I ended up in the superintendent's office. I thought I wanted to be queen of the kids forever, just stay in my little classroom and do all my other things. And I was a very adamant union leader as well. In my period of time there in the school department, the collective bargaining came in. We negotiated the very first contract in the 1960s and had it. It was sometimes I fought even with my dear old friend George Colella, but it's just been a wonderful life there, wonderful life, and I consider myself really lucky.
That was excellent, Carol. I'd like to ask you a question about the feeling of the current status, not only of the high school, but of the schools in Revere generally.
Well, you know, I brought with me Peter Macaulay's book about Revere school days because when I started teaching, there were 17 schools in Revere, lots of little neighborhood schools. Kids, you know. I see
the picture on the first. Could you show them on the TV?
Sure, here it is. Picture. This is a great book, and the Historical Society sells these. And I don't think they're very much money. And they have postcards in them of the old schools, you know. So there was, you know, that's the school I started in, the old Revere High School. And here is the center school down there, which was originally a building that housed the high school before that high school was built. And when I started teaching, it was used for shops. Kids went down for, you know, woodworking and metal and sheet metal and all of those things, drafting. Right. They did all of those down the street. And they would leave the building and come back. You would never have anyone do that today. Times have certainly changed over that.
I can vouch for that because I also was a draftsman. That was part of my profession. But we did it by hand. Then they came out with the computer and they brought in the CAT system, the computer.
That's right. Yeah, that's what we have at Revere High School now.
Right, except for one thing. I'm computer illiterate. Don't put that out of the air.
It's very easy once you get on it. It's mostly people have a fear of how to use it.
Exactly.
Once somebody shows you how, I got a new iPhone and I thought, I'll never know how to use it. Well, you know, you learn one step at a time. And before you know it, you know things. Of course, there are always things you don't know, too.
The reason I'm afraid to get a computer because I got 3 cats in the house and the mouse is
I knew you'd give me a joke, Morris. I knew you would.
I had to get that in.
Well, anyway, so there were 17 schools. I mean, in those days at the elementary school, kids went home for lunch all the time. And you know, mothers were still home making lunches. That, of course, has changed. The economy has changed everything. And also the way we deliver education has changed. I mean, a small school, as nice as it was in the little neighborhood, you can't deliver education economically, Nor, I mean, it can't be as academically challenging if the kid is with one teacher all day long and without any other support systems that we put into place in our elementary schools now. And so it's very different. I remember my first class, I had 5 classes a day, 20 minutes for lunch, 5 classes that I taught, and the 6th period of the day, whatever day it was, I had to do study hall. And so and my homeroom was actually in study hall. There were 5 of them in there. And I had, actually, John Squibb from the water department was in my very first class, right in that. We were the end of the alphabet in the old auditorium, and then we moved from class to class. I had a little cart that I pushed my things around on and went and had over 30 kids in each class.
Carol, you were talking about the kids walking to school. When I was a kid, I myself walked to school a mile each way. I remember that, rain, snow, shine. And if we had absenteeism, we had to make it up. We had to stay after school and make it up. I understand that they're also going to have a day of school where the kids will walk. Could you elaborate on that?
Yes, it's an interesting program. It's funded by Walk Boston. Julie DeMauro, who's a parent in the Wayland School, is the coordinator of it. And, you know, there was a time when every kid walked to school, went home to lunch. Sometimes we did it twice a day, of course, because we didn't stay for lunch, so we did it morning back and noontime back, and played in the play yard for a long time, you know, and then went into school. We couldn't wait to do that. It was fun. So, but that all passed with a period of time, not only because smaller schools went out, but because parents didn't let their children walk to school anymore. They were afraid to do that. Or if they were going to work, they just wanted to be sure they were there. So there's a movement now where we try to get everybody to walk to school. All the parents, don't bring it in. It has 2 benefits. 1, it's great for exercise, and number 2, it eliminates a whole lot of traffic around the school, and it's much safer. There's less pollution, so it's a win-win-win all the way. So we do that. Usually it's on a Wednesday, and they go in, and then we serve them breakfast, and then they go off on their way to the day. Everybody I have participated at the Wayland, and everyone who has done it thinks it's a great thing, and it's moving next to the Garfield, and it'll be everywhere. When we open school in the fall, it'll be in all of the schools. So it's a great program.
Thank you, Carol. But I see you have books. I see 3 books on your table. Can you talk about your book project? I'd love to hear that.
Okay. I have a project for the Historical Society. I'm a member, of course, and I admire all the work that they do. And I have been trying to get a yearbook for as far back as I can, from as far back as they have been published, for every year, because I think these are unique historical documents. So my oldest yearbook, the one that dates back the farthest, is 1938. It has been recovered. I bought it on eBay. I forget how much I paid for it, but it wasn't too expensive. And they had recovered it. So, I mean, as you can see, the inside, but it was someone who took very good care of this yearbook, because
What year is that
it's
yearbook?
not marked up.
Oh.
1938.
Wow.
And the principal of Revere High School was a name that you will know. It was Mr. A.C. Whalen, Augustine C. Whalen, a veteran of World War II, and the school is named after him. And it has all of the people who were on there. This is falling out. I recognize lots of these names. Of course, the women have had, you know, different names when they got married, but there were people who were around, and the editor was someone named Strain, and the fathers and mothers put in. And the school committee had names that are kind of famous. One was Fanny C. Janvrin, and we know we have a street named after the Janvrins in Revere. So, and George Mitchell became a teacher at Revere High School, and Frank Farrell was a lawyer in Revere for many times. So there were lots of, and the superintendent was Mr. Carl Linstall. He had been a high school teacher, and then he had been, and while he was a high school teacher, he was my father's football coach. So my father graduated from Revere High School in 1923, but they didn't have yearbooks as such then. So that's my oldest one. But probably my most treasured one is 1939, because Rosalie Vincent gave this to me, and it was her mother's when her mother passed on. And her name was Mildred Ruth Giannino, certainly a name that is well known in Revere. She lived at 435 Malden Street, and I guess she graduated in June 15th, 1939.
Excuse me, Carol, is that the same Rosalie Vincent that works for Kathy?
That's Rosalie Vincent,
Okay.
who is
wonderful woman.
Wonderful woman, works for Kathy Ann Reinstein,
Right.
a very active member of the Revere Beach Partnership with other people
and
there.
She helps us a tremendous amount, too.
Oh, she's just great. You know, Kathy's great. She deserves someone great. And it was still Mr. Linstall who was there. But what I like about this, I have Mildred Giannino's Roundtable Club certificate here, too, that she passed on to me. And she wrote little notes in here.
Could you read one of them for us?
Yeah, she wrote little things about who was in there. For example, when somebody got married and who Lenore Macaulay was. Actually, she knew Lenore Macaulay because that woman became Cantlon and her daughter Kathy became a teacher in Revere. She knew that. And she wrote these about all these people. She actually made a note about, you know, who they married here. Dora Giannaco married Alan Menard. And they're in pencil, so they're hard to see. And Jeanette Goldberg married somebody named Romney.
What year is that?
I don't think it was Mitt, and Matt the son. So this is a 1939. That's
38, 39?
39, but the 39 is the one I treasured the most. I have many of them. I have over 30.
Wow.
But I don't have every year, and some of mine are in very poor condition because I used to lend them out a lot, and sometimes they'd come back and I would see that somebody had ripped out a picture, probably a girl of a boy that she liked or a boy of a girl that he liked, and some of the pictures are missing. And a lot of people, I don't think they thought about it. When I was a teacher, when I first started teaching, I made only $4,000 a year, and I know it was terrible pay then as well. I couldn't afford to buy a yearbook, and so I didn't buy them in the beginning, but I've been lucky enough that people have given them to me. And I did start to buy them in the late 50s. I started to buy them. I saved up and I bought the yearbook, so that I have most of them on the way through. Some grads have been good enough to give it, but I look on eBay all the time to see if there are any for sale, and I bought several of them. I bought an immaculate one for 1947.
Wow.
So I try to get what I can, and this is all going to the Historical Society.
And that book over there, Carol?
Well, this is a historical document. I told you I was very active in the Revere Teachers Association.
Yep.
Which we formed in the early 1960s. Richard Champa, Alita Gracef, a lot of people came then and formed it. And there was always a kind of informal social group, but we formed it to try to get more money, frankly. And so I sort of inherited this book, which is dated 1895 to 1959. And this is the first meeting of the Revere Teachers Club, about how they would form the union. And the interesting thing is, Mr. Pitney.
What year is that in?
This was 1895.
Before
Mr.
my time.
Pitney, I think it was before everybody's time. Mr. Pitney was the superintendent of schools. He called the meeting together. It says, on Tuesday, January 15th, 1895, the teachers of Revere met at the Winthrop Avenue building, which is the center school and the current special needs building.
Right.
To discuss the matter of forming a teachers club. 35 teachers came. Superintendent Mr. Putney came, and a member of the school committee, Mr. Dow, who was a famous Revere name, they came to the meeting as well. Now, that certainly would not happen today. I chuckle when I see that. And elected president was the superintendent of schools.
Excuse me, Carol, is that where the Kiwanis Club is now? Across from the ball field?
Yeah, the Kiwanis goes there sometimes to help,
That's what
but
I
it's
mean,
the
but-
special needs
But
building.
that's the building?
Right, that's the
And
building.
that was in 1800?
1895.
Okay.
Wow.
I
It
never
was-
knew that. I never
Well,
knew that.
it was used as a school then, as
Okay.
one of the regular schools. See, Revere High School, the building that is where Immaculate is now, was not built then.
That's
so
right.
that was the high school
Oh,
in there. So they met there.
Oh, okay.
So this is a historical document. It goes up to 1915. And look at what beautiful handwriting it is. How nice it is.
It is nice and clear.
Nice and clear. And you recognize old names who are here.
Any
For
famous
example,
ones in there?
Well, Mary T. Ronan, whom the school in Beachmont was named after, was there. The Barrows School and so forth. The Achenbach, of course, was named after a World War I veteran. But some of those schools, Barrows was named after a teacher. You had so many of these schools that were named after teachers, too. So actually, those teachers became principals because in those days, the men didn't want to go into teaching. It didn't pay enough.
That's a good history lesson about the schools of Revere County.
Yes. So it's been, it's a great thing. And as you know, you've talked to Jeff Perlman, too.
Right.
He's a little younger than I am, so.
I got to ask you, talking about schools, I heard this, I don't know, maybe you can help me out on this. I heard some women talking outside. They were talking about a new school coming to Revere or a new high school. Did you hear anything about that, Carol?
Well, I've heard a lot about new schools.
I know that. Yep.
So let me go back a little bit to the
Please
school
do.
building.
Right.
In 1999, I was superintendent, and we put in a sort of intention letter. And I remember we had to get it in by December 31st. And I remember walking, Dr. Dakin and I, Paul Dakin had written out the proposal, and he and I were ready we had the school committee approve it. And I walked up to City Hall to get Bob Has to sign the paper because it had to be signed by the mayor.
Right.
It was snowing out. I remember that specifically. And he signed it because he, coming in immediately in January, was going to be Tom Ambrosino. But we needed Bob to sign it, and of course he did. So I always think of him as being one of the first ones in on the ground floor. It wasn't until June of 2001, I was retiring June 30th, and just before I retired, we submitted the plan for the 5 new schools. Now, of course, we never knew that we were going to have any of the difficulties that we had. So we started to build the 5 new schools. First, the Wayland School and the Susan B. Anthony up there. They were coming first. And then there were some changes, and we do it. My friend George Colella chastised me all the time for the changes we made, but we felt educationally about what we had to do, who was in what school, and how it would have to be done. And so we went to the Paul Revere, and I hope you've seen it because it's talk about a history lesson. It's the names of the colonies on the floor,
Right.
the Paul Revere, everything from the colonial days. It's really just a wonderful building, beautiful, and we kept the old things. Then we went to the Rumney Marsh, of course, and then they have a historical thing in the front of it too, a mosaic, which is beautiful. And we have to keep moving, of course, because we're going to be building the McKinley. Now, before that, the old Garfield, the new Garfield opened up in 1999.
Right.
Backtrack a little bit, and you had the new Beachmont School, which replaced the 3 neighborhood schools in Beachmont. That opened up in the mid to early 80s. I think it was 84 or
That's the one on
85.
Bennington Street.
That's right. That's the one there. So that we're replacing all of the schools. Now, and of course, we're looking forward to the McKinley right now. Things got sidetracked after 9/11, and the economy, tanked, and
Right.
everything went down.
South,
and so
yeah.
everything got sidetracked. Remember, we were awarded 90% reimbursement that other places in the state didn't get. That is, for every dollar that the Revere taxpayers put in, the state put in $9. So it was a great deal. It was a little less of course, on the Rumney. But, you know, there are people around, and on the McKinley we're going to get 80%, but I'll tell you, there are plenty of cities around here who would love to get that 80%.
You know, I was always under the impression, but I learned a lot from talking to people like you, that it was the towns and the cities that pay for the school, but the state also helps them out. I never realized that.
Yes, and for a place like Revere, it more than helps them out. It practically pays the entire bill.
Right.
So we're really lucky. I mean, they help with the school system too. You know, they decide how much money a school system needs, and we never get from the city. Not that this is not meant as a criticism at all, because we're not a wealthy city.
I know that.
They give us only what they have to give us. They don't give us 1 penny more. And the rest of it, we're really lucky enough to have people write grants so that we can support a lot of programs. Now, the new high school, we went in from the old high school to the new high school in November of 1974. So the question is, how long does a high school last? And we've been in there 40 years. Well,
right.
When you look at it, a high school, when that high school was built, it was projected to last for 50 years. But think about what has happened in that period of time. Just think of the internet alone. Think of the different way we have to deliver education now. For example, we will be moving, and I think in this new Nellie Mae grant that we got, one of the things we'll be considering is using, you know, college teachers on videos, using them on the internet, doing a lot of learning on the internet, moving with a teacher in a classroom to coordinate all of that, to take the kids and do them in small groups. I think it's, you know, when I started teaching, I stood up in front of the class and I talked for most of it. And I called on the kids, so who knows the answer to this and who knows the answer. And sometimes I had projects. Kids would stand up and give the project. And, you know, I'd spend some time after school, of course, always preparing them for that. But it was very different because the teacher was regarded as the person with all the knowledge. We know today that nobody can know everything that there is. No one can. So you need to use outside sources and change things. And we need to build a school building that will reflect that. And of course, all of the old buildings were filled with asbestos. And we needed to replace that. And the wiring, when I started teaching and I went in, I had a plug now in the front of my room and in the back of my room and on the side. Do you know how fortunate I thought I was? Because in the old high school I had one plug that would blow a fuse all the time. And now look how much we need. Everybody, every kid in the building needs a plug. So
for the
we
computers,
put those
every
in.
one of them.
Yeah. And so that unfortunately, like us, buildings get older, and so I think it will be, not in the very near future, but in the near future, we need to talk about a new high school.
I'd like to talk to you about, Carol, if I may, about some of your students. And I know we've got some very famous students, but I'd like to start out with one gentleman that I had on this show a couple of weeks ago, and he was a mayor of the city of Revere, Tommy Abrasino. Could you elaborate on him just a little? Because I got a whole list of them for you.
He was one of my, you know, I had him in a sophomore honors class, so these kids were really smart. And traditionally what we did, the Shakespeare play that was assigned then was Julius Caesar, which is a great play to do. And I used to save it to the end of the year and we'd act it out. And I always said, I never knew whether I should have given which of the best parts. Should I give Tommy the thoughtful philosopher part of Brutus, or should I give him the gung-ho Mark Antony? These were the two great parts, but of course they were the opposite people. And I think I gave him Brutus because he is so smart, and Brutus was the smart philosopher. But he's also a lot of Mark Antony in that he knows how to get things done. He can look at something and get a solution to it. He was great. Every kid loved him, every girl had a crush on him, and every guy wanted to hang out with him.
Excuse me, Carol. I have an Egyptian gentleman coming on here eventually. And
Sam?
Right.
Oh, my neighbor.
Is he?
Yes.
Well, he gave me a little synopsis about Egypt so I would learn about it, but I never knew that Cleopatra had a son by Julius Caesar.
That's
Whether you
right.
happen to me?
That's right. She did. Right.
And she was Greek, if my memory is correct.
I think she was part Greek. I'm not sure. I
Okay.
really don't. But Sam, I'm sure will know.
Okay.
Right.
The next one I'd like to ask you is about a beautiful lady at our center, Eileen Murillo. I believe you know her?
Eileen and I taught together. Eileen,
did you?
Yes. Well, Eileen was a nurse, you know, in
Right.
World War II. But she also taught, we begged her to come and teach science. She taught science at the Garfield. She was wonderful. And, of course, I admired her son. I've read all his books, Roland, who did not go to Revere High School, but he went to a very fancy private school. But he went all through the McKinley and credits the McKinley teachers. There's those great teachers who gave him the background that he needed. And of course he came from his father Roland and his mother Eileen. He came from a family of readers. And that's of course one of the best things that parents can do for their kids, you know, show them how to read a lot.
And also, our new council president, Mr. Ira Novoselsky, was one of your students.
He was, Ira, and I think I had Ira only for a study period. But in those days, kids were in your study period, were in the back of your room, and you know what a great talker Ira is. So even though he wasn't in my class, he talked all along, and he's a great learner.
He's still doing it. He's still
and
doing it at the council.
And I was definitely, his wife, Shelley, Rochelle, was in my class, as was her brother. And, you know, he's just, we have a long, long history.
By the way, there's a lady here that I got the name from someone, Irma Sandler Wertheim, which happens to be a German name.
That's
Could
right.
you elaborate on her a little bit?
She was Jewish. Irma was a World War II veteran when I met her at Revere High School. She had a degree in, quote, what they used to call recreation. And she was a gym teacher at Revere High School. She was also a very smart woman, and her father and uncles and her brother were all doctors and dentists, and they had practices on Shirley Avenue. They were known for giving things out free, and during the Depression, just letting people come in, give them medicine, and people would give them whatever they had. Give them a chicken, give them potatoes, give them whatever it was that they had. She was a great woman, passed away young of cancer.
Oh, yeah.
We've made progress. She would have lived today.
That's true.
Right.
And I can vouch for that, by the
Yeah,
way, Carol. I can
yeah.
really vouch for that.
Lots of us.
We only have about a minute and a half left, so I'd like to go down a few names. I'll read them up, and you can just tell me about them. You had John Correggio.
John Correggio, right, in the old high school. Yep, one of my
Right.
first classes.
You also had, I believe, not Michael.
Yes,
Ferrand.
Michael Ferrenti on the school committee.
You had him
Wonderful
too?
student.
Yep.
Oh, yeah, really sharp student. Yeah, very good. And I actually didn't have Jessica as a student because she's so young, but Jessica, every time Rick Promise and I would do a science fair, a history fair, Jessica would be standing up in all of her poise and doing it. I taught Arthur Guanasso's children, all three of them. I think of, you know, I'm trying to think of, I mentioned John Squibb. I taught John Varengia, the city assessor,
Right.
who was there, an
Yep.
accountant right in this very building.
All smart people.
I taught wonderful people too. I mean, just wonderful, wonderful people. Maybe they're smart, maybe they're not smart. I just
They are
smart.
smart.
It was great. I mean, I taught. You know, Bobby Hass's wife was in my very first class at Revere High School. She was really, you know, terrific. Great person.
Okay, Carol.
Just so many people I couldn't even mention. Tony Abini's children. I
Right, he'll be
couldn't
coming up here eventually.
I couldn't mention all of them. They were. It's been wonderful.
Carol, I got to say, it was a pleasure to have you come up here. You're a credit to the city of Revere. You're a credit to the United States of America. And most of all, you're a credit to the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. We could tell just by looking at your students. So thank you, Carol, for
Thank
spending a half an hour with us.
God
God bless you.
Let me just say, I'm thankful. I'm thankful to God for the blessings I've had. I'm thankful to this entire community because I have had a very happy life. And I have been very, very lucky to meet people all the way, to come and talk to you.
It's
see
my
you.
honor, not yours,
You know,
Carol.
So I really want to thank everybody out there for contributing to this happy life that I have had. All
Right,
my
and may
students.
God bless our troops.
Yes,
May God bless the
amen.
United States of America and the people of Revere. Until the next time, we hope to see you again, and we hope to have this nice guest on, just like we had today with Miss Carol Ty. Thank you.
Thank you, Morris. Thank you.